Good afternoon, church. It's Pastor Brian here, and well, you already know it's me. I think you can tell by the face that's here. I just want to put a quick little video together and just let you know that I've been thinking about you today, and I've spent some time in prayer. Two things every Christian needs right now in this world, as crazy as things is. Number one, you need the Bible. The Bible is our guide, has all the answers for life, and you should have a can of Lysol spray. Between both of those, everything should be okay. And I tease about the Lysol spray, but it is a good thing. It's a good thing to wipe things down. I thought over the next several days, I told you yesterday in church, things were going to change today. I just watched a news conference with the president, and some recommendations have changed today. Last night, we saw these recommendations taking place and see things changing. And we see that happening before us. And as everything's changing around us, as the news keeps breaking of different things, we need to focus on the Lord at this time. Stay informed, know what's going on, but don't go overboard on things. Trust the Lord. He is worthy to be trusted. And I want to give you a little devotional each day, just something to get a break from everything around and just to think about the Lord and what He's done and what He's going to continue to do. One of my favorite books in the Old Testament is Esther. And Esther, it's not a long book, 10 chapters long. And it's a very interesting book. There are only 2 books in the Old Testament that do not mention the name of God. And Esther is one of those books. In fact, there was even questions if it should be included in the canon of Scripture because of the fact that God's name's not mentioned. But besides the fact that God's name's never mentioned there is not a book in the Bible where you see God more clearly working and behind the scenes than what you do in the book of Esther. The book of Esther, I put in context for you. The children of Israel were taken captive into Babylon for their rebellion against God and for not obeying Him and doing things His way. That lasted for 70 years. People started going back. Zerubbabel went back and the temple got rebuilt. And Ezra came and restored the worship. And in between that time, right in that time, we see not every one of the Israelites or the Jews got to go back to Jerusalem. Some of them stayed there in Shushan by the palace there and things. And so they were still in captivity, but they were working there. And the book of Esther is very interesting because it starts out with a king. This king, Xerxes, Ahasuerus, whatever you want to call him, this king is not a godly man. He throws a party for himself. It's 180 days long. And then 7 days, and the Bible talks about how he's drunk, and through his drunkenness, he makes a royal decree, and he wants his wife to come out, Vashti, and she won't come. And so he divorces her, puts her out of the palace, and then he goes in search of a new queen. And so they take all the virgins of the city, and they make basically a pageant out of it, so the king could pick who he wanted. And out of all the ladies that were there, Esther is the one that gets picked. And the king doesn't know that Esther is a Jew. He doesn't know these things. But behind the scenes, God's at work. We think about chapter number 3, Haman gets raised in power. And as that happens, everyone's supposed to worship him. But one man that wouldn't worship him was Mordecai. Mordecai wouldn't worship him, and in the process of not worshiping him, Haman got really upset. And Haman decided he wanted to kill Mordecai and his family and the Jews. With all that taking place, and I skipped one little very important piece. Right before Haman comes into power, the next thing that we see is the fact that Mordecai overhears a couple of these men talking about how they're going to take out the king. And so Mordecai goes to Esther and tells her this, and she reports it to the king. And the scriptures say that it was written in the Chronicles of the Medes and Persians what Mordecai did for the king. Haman rises to power. We see that Mordecai doesn't bow down to Haman. And I believe he didn't do that because he worshiped the God of Israel. And he knew what the Bible said. He was a Jew. He knew how they weren't supposed to bow down to all these different things. And so Haman gets this idea. He's going to destroy the Jews. And he takes this dice, basically, like casting lots, takes this dice. And whatever number that dice rolls on is when he's going to destroy them. And out of all the numbers on there, it could have been 1, it would have been 1 month. He ended up getting a 12. which meant 12 months from then, he was going to carry out this thing to kill all the Jews. And then the Bible continues on, the Jews are in grief, and you see them fasting. The Bible doesn't even mention prayer in the book of Esther. They were fasting, and Esther says she's going to try and save her people. She's going to try and talk to the king no matter what takes place. If she perishes, she perishes. And we see her devotion to her people and her love for her people. And we see she gets the king's attention and asks the king and Haman to come to dinner at her house. They come to dinner, and it's very interesting. She does not ask the request or anything for her people that night. I don't know if she didn't feel the timing was right. If God was leading her, something happened at this time. So what ended up happening was she said, King, I have one more request. Could you come tomorrow night again so that we can have dinner one more time? So the king goes back, and the king that night, he cannot sleep. And it's so interesting. He can't sleep. And so what he does, some of you, when you can't sleep, you listen to my messages. And if it works for you, great. Go ahead, listen to my messages if it helps put you to sleep. But he had them read to him a book. He read the Chronicles of the Medes and the Persians. And of all things, of all nights, that night, the guy read to him about how Mordecai had warned about those two that conspired to kill the king. And the king started thinking, did I do anything to reward Mordecai? And the king didn't. Think about that. How often does a king now reward somebody when they do something? And so Haman is coming before, he has a gallows built, he's all ready to take out Mordecai, and he's coming to the king to talk about that. And the king says, Haman, what would you do? There's a guy who should be rewarded and grown in the kingdom and magnified. What would you do for him? He's like, I'd give him the king's horse, give him the king's garments, and I would just make a big deal out of him, because Haman thought that it was talking about him. So what we see happen is, the king's like, all right, Haman, go carry that out on Mordecai. And so Mordecai was praised. And all of this takes place, and it's just interesting to see God working. We think about the fact that they get back together with Esther for another meal. And Esther explains to the king what Haman has done, how he's trying to kill Mordecai. The king gets very upset. He goes outside and he's in a rage. And inside, Haman is pleading with Esther on his hands and knees upon her bed, wishing and praying that he could be forgiven. The king comes in right at that time, thinks that he's making a pass at his queen, his wife, at Esther, and he orders that Haman be killed. We see all this take place. We see, because the law of the Medes and the Persians, that thing could not be reversed, that law. But they were able to go out, and in doing things, they were able to take out those people that were going to destroy them. And Mordecai rises even higher into power. I want you to understand something. God takes care of his people. We live in a crazy world today. Matthew Henry said this. He said, though the name of God be not in Esther, the finger of God is. And he's directing many minute events for the bringing about of his people's deliverance. And sometimes events that take place, this coronavirus, all these things around us are taking place, we get extremely discouraged, disheartened. What's going to happen? Fear comes in. But with God, I want you to understand something. God is still in control today. There are no coincidences with God. Look at God. There are no lucky things that happen to some people. God is at work no matter what's taking place. Just recount the story of Esther with me. Esther just happened to be a Jewish girl and be beautiful. She just happens to get favor with the king. Mordecai just happens to hear the plot of the king going to be killed. A report just happens to be put in the king's chronicles. Haman just happens to notice that Mordecai is not bowing down and just happens to find out he's a Jew. That dice that is rolled just happens to land on a 12 and put the date off almost a year. And Esther just happens to put the king's approval, just happens to get it, and she comes for dinner. And then when she doesn't ask the question, and he comes another day, it just happens this way. Her delay just happens to send Haman out by Mordecai, and all these things happen. And what I want you to understand is this. It just so happens the king that night read the Chronicles. and saw what Mordecai had done. God took care of things. God's not asleep today. God is at work. He sees, he cares, he knows, and he promises, church, that all things will work together for good. Everything around us looks bad, right? Stock market, 2,300 points down just a few minutes ago. The coronavirus spreading, these things going on, things look bad, but God promises to his people that all things work together for good. God will work this out. I want to encourage you today and over the next several days, instead of spending so much time focused on all these things, focus on the Lord. Spend some time singing and looking at some of the great songs of our faith. Look at great is thy faithfulness. In the midst of this, God is still faithful today. God is still there today. Think about one of those newer songs, Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you every moment. We need him every second. Sing to him. Worthy is the Lamb that was slain for us. Thank you for the cross, Lord, and the price you paid for us. Blessed assurance, Jesus, hey, he's mine. And oh, what a foretaste of glory divine. Don't let all these circumstances around you ruin you. And I know we look ahead the rest of this week. Just heard a few minutes ago the president say a 15-day plan, not to gather in groups of more than 10. And some of you are thinking, what are we doing for church? I don't know. We'll figure that out later. Today's Monday. Let's take care of Monday and see where we are Tuesday. And we'll go on from there. The one thing I do know is on Wednesday night, unless the Lord returns, we are, me and my family are going to get away for a few days. But we decided we're sticking around town just based on all the, we were thinking of San Diego, and then we thought, what if they close down all the restaurants and things? Think about being stuck in a hotel with your kids for a few days with nothing to do. That's trouble. Thought about Big Bear. A lot of snow up there, cold up there. So we figure we'll stay home, do some things as a family, spend some time together, as well as maybe some extra time in prayer. Also send out some of these videos just to let you know that I'm praying for you and thinking about you, and give you something to look at and think about in the next upcoming days. On Wednesday night, I'm going to do service. I'll probably just be here in the auditorium, just me, and we're going to do our Bible study in the book of Ephesians. If you, another thing that you might need to know, I also will answer any Bible questions this Wednesday. So if you have a Bible question and you've just wondered about it, don't send me a bunch of questions about the coronavirus and is it the end times, okay? And I think the end times and all of that prophecy and all that stuff is going to be a lot worse than this coronavirus. The panic won't be, but the reality of it probably will be. But I want you to know I love you. Keep your focus on the Lord right now. Remember, as I just mentioned the book of Esther, God's name was never mentioned there. And God worked in so many different people. God is always behind the scenes doing his work. Hey, church, he loves you. Put a smile on your face today. Tell someone about him today. Stay calm. Don't get mad when you stand in line for an hour to get milk, or when you stand forever to get different things. Encourage people. Love on people. If there's any of you that need anything, and those of you who are elderly in our church, if I could do anything in any way to help you, please let me know. You got my phone number. You know how to get a hold of me. And I would love if I go to the store for you, if I could bring you anything. If you need prescriptions, you need anything, please let us know. I have people at church who've offered to help with that. So I love you. Have a great Monday. Keep focused on the Lord. Keep singing to him. Keep praising him. Keep praying to him. Let's have a great rest of the day. I'll see you sometime tomorrow.